Mercedes have had yet another devastating weekend in Suzuka, where they managed to finish P7 and P9, and some of the messages sent by Lewis Hamilton on the radio speak volumes as to where the team currently stands in the 2024 season. With the 7-time world champion playing the ultimate teammate game and letting Russell by, the tactics were still not favored towards him, which provoked a very angry message. And after all of the drama has calmed down and Lewis picked up just 2 points from this race, the question arises, is this where the 7-time world champion will draw the line? And has he given up on trying to be competitive with Mercedes? It was yet another painful outing for Lewis Hamilton in Suzuka, one that the fans hoped to escape given the fact that the free practice sessions did seem promising, with the low track temperatures and the prediction that they wouldn't change drastically during the race event itself. However, after starting at P7 and out-qualifying his teammate for the first time this season, Hamilton has yet again failed to finish higher than Russell, ending up at P9 and managing to grab 2 points only in the Drivers' Championship for his team, while his younger teammate grabbed a stronger P6 finish right behind Alonso. Lewis Hamilton, however, offered a tactic that did not seem to play in his favor, and after the red-flagged first lap of the race, Mercedes were looking at a solid chance to actually score good points due to the clouds overshadowing the track and cooling the temperatures a bit. That is why both of them switched to the hard tyre compound during this period, and when they got back on the track, the pace just wasn't there, which is why Hamilton offered to let Russell go and play the ultimate team game. Hamilton explained that the move to let Russell by was calculated from his side. In the opening stages of the race, the 7-time world champion believed to have picked up damage after close contact with Charles Leclerc and had huge issues with understeer in the first tyre stint. Therefore, not being able to turn the car properly in any of the corners was the primary reason why Hamilton decided to let his teammate by and optimize the team strategy more than his personal race. But when it became evident that the vibrations of the car won't change and that they will indeed fight for scrap points, Hamilton's anger was quite visible when he ordered Bono to change the strategy, because what they had originally planned is definitely not going to work. Furthermore, Hamilton went on to talk about the car's performance on different tyre compounds, adding, "The hard tyre was pretty bad. The medium tyre was much better, so for sure in hindsight it looks like we should have had 2 medium tyres. But in general, the car was pretty bad today." The interesting moment that we need to add here is that Hamilton is the one who actually offered to let Russell ahead due to him being the slower driver for Mercedes, which is not very easy to acknowledge if you have Hamilton's reputation. But a couple of laps later, it became evident that the pace isn't there, and the strategy that Mercedes had in mind needs to be changed. So, after Hamilton's angry message, Mercedes only fulfilled half of it. They called him in the pits, and they still mounted a hard compound tyre in the W15, despite it proving to be quite hard to maintain the pace with, which could have hindered Hamilton's hopes of having a more competitive weekend ahead of him. This is something that he questioned right after getting out of the pit stop, asking why he lost so much time as well. And when talking about the overall strategy for Hamilton and Russell, Mercedes went on to elaborate their choice to a deeper extent, adding, "With our tyre allocation, we were able to give ourselves the possibility of looking at either 1 or 2 stops after the red flag, hence the hard tyre restart." Ultimately, as the race progressed, the tyre degradation showed that the 2-stop was going to be the quickest way to the flag. Our second and third stints showed a solid pace compared to those around us. We knew that Suzuka would not be our strongest track though, and with time lost being overtaken in the offset strategy, we couldn't make it back to P6, which was likely the maximum today. Now, even if everything went in Hamilton and Mercedes' favor, the fact that they were aiming for a P6 finish as a maximum in this race goes to show that the situation is far from perfect in the Silver Arrows camp. Lewis Hamilton has spoken about his wants and needs from the car, and after being quite satisfied with what the engineers have done for this weekend, the pace has suddenly disappeared, and he found himself in a no-man's zone. All he could have done after the race was laugh after barely picking up any points, and for him to continue the season like this with the team that he achieved so much in the past 11 years is quite degrading to say the least. Not to mention the fact that he's now publicly admitting that he is the slower driver, and therefore he's very unlikely to be prioritized in strategy or team choices in the remainder of the season. However, if we are to listen to Toto Wolff, the Austrian is pretty happy with what they have achieved here in Japan, which is quite contradictory to what the 7-time world champion had to say on this matter. Adding more, Wolff said, The experiments have worked. We have a clear direction, even though the qualifying and racing results do not reflect it at all. We aimed for a one-stop and then realized it wasn't possible, probably over-managing the tires. From the moment we picked up the speed on similar sting lengths, we were competitive. We have a much better understanding of the car. Lots more data that points us in the right direction, even if it's not reflected in the results. I can't want to go racing in Shanghai. We just need a better start to the weekend and see what we can do with the car. The direction and data are one thing, but at the end of the day, it's the results that matter. And if Lewis and Russell are not getting what they want from the car, then it's inevitable that the suspense will start to grow in Russell's camp too, because he obviously did not sign to be the 6th fastest driver on the grid with so much competition coming from McLaren and Aston Martin. Quite frankly, McLaren are 3rd place now and quite ahead of Mercedes, so the only competition the Silver Arrows have at this moment is Aston Martin, which would be different if Lance Stroll had a bit of a better understanding as to how to extract the maximum potential out of the car, similar to what Alonso does. What is even further bad news for Mercedes is that they're approaching a time in which they would have to freeze the development talks with the 7-time world champion regarding the 2024 season. And when talking about this matter, Hamilton opened up about how this is very likely to happen sooner rather than later, unlike in 2009 in McLaren, when these talks happen at the end of the year. Furthermore, he elaborated, "At some stage, I will have to start the conversation with Toto. I've never been in this position at this time of the year. When I was leaving McLaren, it was towards the end of the season. I had my first fit at Mercedes after the season was done. I'm not quite sure how to navigate it, but right now I want to finish on a high here, so all my energy is going into this. Of course, there is excitement for the future. Right now, we're going through a difficult phase. That is my challenge, and all my energy is going to try and figure out how we can get ourselves back on the top." The top, however, has changed vastly compared to a couple of years ago, and right now we cannot help but note that Mercedes is legitimately looking like a midfield team, with them being nowhere near close to the top 3 contenders and in a very close fight with Aston Martin for P5. Be that as it may, if we add the lack of Hamilton's output towards where the car would move with certain upgrades and development paths, this season is slowly shaping up to be one of the worst ones that the 7-time world champion had to endure in his career. Not to add the fact that it will be his teammate who will be in charge for the remainder of the campaign, because he will be the one who will have a great say in where the team decides to go with their car, something that has been quite questionable in the past couple of years, if we must add. With all this in mind, do you think that Mercedes has what it takes to end the season in a solid manner? And more importantly, do you think that Lewis has already given up on trying to be a better driver in Mercedes, even though that goes against his principles and manners as a driver and a committed member of the Silver Arrows? Let us know in the comments below.